All right. I want to share with you first a new document that I have sent you.
我想跟大家先分享一下刚刚发给大家的一个新的这样一个材料课件。
In this document, you can see which planets move the fastest through the zodiac from geocentric point of view.
那么从这个课件上面，大家可以看到，从我们地球的这个角度来看，哪个行星它运转的速度更快。
Okay. I thought this might help you when it came to getting a better idea about applying and separating aspects. And it's a good thing to know anyway.
我觉得这样可以帮助大家去了解一下，什么样是入相，什么样是出相。
Now, I've listed the moon and the sun and planets in the order of their fastest being first.
我是按照最快到最慢的这样的方式来列月亮、太阳、水星、金星这些他们这些我们在星盘上看到的这些行星的。
Okay.
行星和恒星还有卫星。
Now the moon, we know, is the only truly geocentric body.
实际上我们知道月亮是那个真正的以地球为中心的那个绕着地球转的那个星体。
And there are two ways of measuring the moon's orbit around the Earth.
那么我们衡量月亮绕地球转是有两种方法来衡量。
Certainly, we know, before we look at these two ways, that the moon is the fastest of all the celestial objects.
在所有的这种天体来说，我们知道月亮它的速度是最快的。
We can see that the moon will move through the signs of the zodiac in 27.322 days.
我们知道月亮绕着黄道转一周，它运行的时长是27.322天。
That's called the sidereal month. Sidereal is for star. The word sider is the word for star.
那么这个我们叫做恒星月。那么 sidereal 这个 sider 这个词实际上是星的意思。
However, the amount of time that elapses from one new moon to the next is 29.531 days.
但是从一个新月再到下一次新月的完整的周期是29.531天。
This is called the synodic month because it has to do with the cycle of the Earth, Sun, and Moon.
然后这个叫做朔望月，因为这个名称呢，实际上是表示的是太阳、地球、月亮它们之间的这个周期。
And the reason that one of them is longer, 29.5 versus 27.3, is that you also have movement going on in terms of the Sun and Earth.
之所以朔望月比恒星月长一些，是因为这个我们有不同的这个运转。
And so the span of time is a little longer between new moons.
因为太阳本身、月亮、地球都在运转，所以说呢，这样的话，时间就会更长一些。
The moon, of course, never retrogrades.
那个月亮是从来不会逆行的。
If it did, we'd all be in trouble.
如果月亮逆行，我们都会出大麻烦了。
The troubles would be much more than an astrological problem.
这个问题可不是那个占星的问题了。
It would probably destroy civilization if the moon ever retrograded.
如果是月亮一旦逆行的话，我们整个文明可能就完蛋了。
Changing the tides of the ocean, the Earth's rotation, the seasons, everything would get thrown out of whack.
季节呀，还有潮汐呀，全部都会变化，那个就我们文明就完蛋了。
Okay. All right. So there we go. On the moon. Any questions on that? It's pretty straightforward.
这就是月亮。大家有什么问题吗？对月亮？
Essentially, the moon moves about 1 degree through the zodiac, 1 degree every 2 hours.
那么月亮呢，大概是每2个小时是1度。
Okay. All right. Mercury.
然后是水星。
Mercury is the next fastest.
就是水星是天体里面运动的第2快的。
However, as we all know, Mercury retrogrades 3 times a year, every year.
但是我们都知道，每年水星会逆行3次。
And this means that it makes it appear that Mercury takes about 377 days to complete the cycle through the zodiac.
这就让它看起来好像水星绕黄道一周的完整周期是377天左右。
In fact, we know that Mercury orbits the Sun every 88 days.
实际上我们知道的是，水星绕太阳一周是88天。
But from the Earth's point of view, it takes about 377 days for Mercury to go through all 12 signs.
但是从地球的角度来看呢，是需要377天，这个水星才会绕那个12星座一圈。
However, Mercury can move faster than any other planet through a sign.
但是呢，水星穿越一个星座可以比其他行星都要快。
Sometimes covering 2 degrees in one day.
它有的时候每天会运行2度。
And can speed through an entire sign in 17 days.
就是有时候用17天就可以穿越一个完整的星座。
Now, some of you may have looked at your chart and said, "Gee, you know, I haven't seen many squares between the Sun and Mercury."
那很多人可能看自己的星图说，哎，我好像没有看到过星图，有太阳和水星的4分相的相位啊，没有看到过很多这样的星图。
If you've seen any, something is wrong.
如果你真的看到这样的星图的话，说明这个星图肯定错了。
Because the Sun and Mercury, from the Earth's point of view, stay very close together.
因为从地球的角度来看，太阳和水星它们永远是离得都很近的。
And in fact, the Sun and Mercury are never more than 28 degrees apart.
其实太阳和水星的距离永远不会超过28度。
All right. So you can see that the only major aspect you can have for the Sun and Mercury is a conjunction.
所以说，大部分你能看到的最多的这样的相位是太阳和水星的相位是合相。
Now, in a different course, we will talk about the cycle of Mercury because the retrogrades of Mercury have a lot to do with its cycle, but that's not part of this course.
那么以后呢，我们更多的谈水星的周期，因为逆行实际上也是水星的周期里面我们要谈到的。不过这不是我们这一节课要讲的内容。
Now, another thing about Mercury is Mercury and Venus. You may say, well, I've never seen a square between Mercury and Venus or an opposition either.
另外一个就是水星和金星的关系，你可能说我从来没看到水星和金星4分相和对分相的状况。
This is because Mercury and Venus can never be more than 78 degrees apart in the zodiac.
这是因为水星和金星在黄道上永远不会超过78度。
Therefore, Mercury and Venus can only make 3 of the aspects we're covering in this course, which is the conjunction, semisextile, or the sextile.
所以说，水星和金星只能形成3种相位：合相、12分相和6分相。
Now, I will later on in this course at least give you a list of other aspects that some astrologers use.
那么在这个课之后呢，我可以给大家一些其他占星师他们用的相位。
There are aspects used that were invented by the great astronomer astrologer Kepler.
开普勒就是伟大的天文学家开普勒，他有用到几个相位。
And I want you to know about them, so I will send them to you at some point in this course.
那我也希望大家能了解这些相位，所以说呢，我们在课后呢会把这些材料再发给大家。
For example, there's one called the semi-square, which is half of a square or 45 degrees.
比如说半次分相，这也是开普勒所用的一个相位。
We'll talk about these, but for now we're dealing with the aspects that I've taught you so far that are more congruent with the 12 signs.
那么不过呢，我们以后再谈那些相位，现在我们还是谈更跟12星座它们一致的这些相位。
Now Venus moves through the 12 signs of the zodiac in approximately 410 days because of the retrograde of Venus, which appears to slow Venus down.
那么金星穿越黄道12星座大约是410天，这也是因为金星的逆行会让金星的速度慢下来。
And the Venus retrograde occurs about every year and a half or 19 months.
那么金星呢，它是每隔1年半或者是19个月，它会逆行一次。
And this is when Venus appears to be moving its slowest through a sign.
这个时候看起来金星它在星座中穿越的速度就会慢下来。
However, when Venus is moving its fastest through the zodiac from the Earth's point of view, it can speed through a sign in about 24 days.
不过呢，如果从地球角度看，当金星它的速度最快的时候呢，它能在24天穿越一个黄道星座。
Notice something else, because the Sun and Venus are never more than 48 degrees apart in the zodiac. The only aspect they can make to each other are the conjunction and the semisextile.
因为太阳和金星在黄道的距离从来不会超过48度，所以它们之间形成的只能是合相或者12分相。
And here's where, in tiny letters, I put in also the semi-square.
另外呢，就是半四分相、8分相。
All right, because some of you will say, what about the semi-square?
因为有人问那个是半四分相又可以怎么样呢？
I promise we will cover those later.
我们以后会讲到，我向大家保证。
All right. So what about the sun? We know the sun moves through all 12 signs every year. Takes about 12 months or 365.25 days.
太阳穿越12星座的时间是12个月，36.25天。
Mars moves through the 12 signs in about 2 years or 23 months.
那么火星穿越12个星座周期是23个月，或也就是接近2年。
Next is Jupiter, which moves through the 12 signs in about 12 years. Spends about 1 year in each sign.
那么下一个是木星，它穿越12星座的周期是12年，在每个星座大约停留1年。
The lunar nodes move through the 12 signs in about 18.6 years and spend approximately 18.5 months in each sign.
月亮焦点穿越12星座的周期是18.6年，在每个星座停大约18.6个月。
All right. Saturn moves through the 12 signs in approximately 29 years, spends 2.5 years in each sign.
土星穿越12个星座周期是29年，大约在每个星座停留大约2.5年。
Uranus moves through the 12 signs in 84 years, spends about 7 years in each sign.
天王星穿越12星座的周期大约84年，在每个星座停留约7年。
You can see as we get out here, they really start to move slow. Neptune takes 165 years to move through the 12 signs.
那么你看，从天王星开始，这个行星越来越慢了。海王星穿越12星座约165年，在每个星座停留13.75年。
And on average, you can see Neptune spends about 13.75 years in each sign.
就是在海王星在每个星座停留大约13.75年。
Pluto, little tiny Pluto, moves through the 12 signs in about 248 years.
在小小的冥王星穿过12星座周期大约是248年。
And Pluto spends significantly varying lengths in each sign due to its very elliptical orbit.
那么因为冥王星它的是高度椭圆形的这个轨道，所以它在每个星座停留的时间非常的不一样。
Elliptical orbit means that it's going to move faster through some signs, like Scorpio, for example, and take much longer in other signs, like Leo, for example.
那么因为它这个是高度椭圆形的这个轨道，所以说它在有些星座它的停留时间非常短，比如说是在天蝎座，但是在有些星座就非常长，比如说在那个狮子座。
Okay, all right. So there you go. Now you know more about the planets. You know more about their speeds from a geocentric or Earth-centered point of view.
这样的话，大家对于行星的速度，还有你从地球看这个行星这个运转周期就更清晰了。
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
大家有问题吗？对这一部分？
About these planets and their
对这一部分有问题吗？
orbital cycles and so forth. Everyone?
How long will Mars retrograde?
Oh. Mars normally, the normal period of retrograde, I mean, quite frankly, it'll stay in the same sign, as you know, for 7 months, 8 months. 8 months in a sign.
火星有时候在一个星座会停，当它逆行的时候会停7个月。
Retrograde period will go on for several months, but when it's actually retrograde.
I'm sorry, just now I may translate wrong. It means from the Mars retrograde. How
the actual retrograde itself is several months.
实际的水星它是逆行会几个月。
You can look at your ephemeris and track all of the different retrogrades and find out actually.
大家可以看看这个，其实看星体表是最快的，看看它多长时间，它逆行会多长。
And you know, astrologers don't just count the retrograde as when it retrogrades and when it goes direct. They look at the whole period within which Mars is moving very slowly through a sign.
其实占星师他不仅仅看火星它逆行那段时期，实际上他要看火星就开始已经很慢的速度很慢的穿过星座的那个就开始看了。
For example, if you were to use your ephemeris, and you would look back and see that Mars went into Libra back in early December.
其实你如果看星历表的话，那么在去年的12月，火星就进入天秤座了。
And that Mars will stay in Libra until the last 5 or 6 days or so of July.
那么它会一直在天蝎座停留在7月，今年7月。
That's a long time for Mars to be in one sign.
就是它会待很久，就是待在一个星座，就是待得很久。
When Mars is not retrograde, it'll move through a sign, or not in a retrograde phase. It'll move through a sign in about 45 days.
一般来说呢，它基本上45天就会过一个星座，但它逆行的时候，它可以长达7个月。
Now, Helen wants to know. Helen asked a very good question. She wants to know, what does it mean to have planets that are retrograde?
Helen 问，当我们星盘上有行星逆行，意味着什么呢？它如果是在它的出生星图上有很多逆行的行星。
First, the outer planets, Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus, those planets are retrograde close to 40% of the time.
首先，那些外行星，天王星、海王星、冥王星，大概40%的时间都在逆行。
So you're going to see a lot of people who have the outer planets retrograde.
所以说，有很多人他们星盘上都有外行星在逆行。
Saturn's pretty close to that. Jupiter's like 30% of the time.
那么土星的逆行时间也跟外行星差不多。那么木星呢，1/3的时间也在逆行。
Of all the planets that retrograde, the one that retrogrades the least is Mars.
那么在所有逆行的行星中，逆行最不频繁的是火星。
And even Mars retrogrades within that 2-year period. So about every 2 years you'll get a retrograde Mars.
即便是以火星呢，它也每2年它都会有逆行一次。
Okay. So a retrograde Mars and a retrograde Venus are considered a little bit more significant.
所以说，在星盘上，逆行的火星和金星，它的意义可能更大一些。
Now, here's the bottom line on the meaning of a retrograde.
这个逆行呢，它的最基本的意义是这样的。
The energy of the planet is internalized a little more.
那么这个逆行的行星，它的能量更内化了。
When we talk about, for example, and you may have heard me use this example before.
我以前可能也说过这样的例子。
If we talk about someone born with Mercury in Gemini, you expect that someone with Mercury in Gemini is probably going to talk.
跟我们说过，一个水星落在双子座的人，你可能觉得，这个人可能很喜欢说话。
Talk a lot.
他很喜欢说话，说很多。
Talk with somebody else while they're talking with you, while they're texting, and while they're on the cell phone.
他们可能是边是给别人打电话，边跟你说话这样的，还边打字之类的。
All right. What about someone with a retrograde Mercury in Gemini?
但是如果这个人的水星仍然是在双子座，但是是逆行，又会如何呢？
They will still do all of those things, but to a lesser degree.
他们还是会像有上述的那种行为方式，但是呢，它没那么程度没那么强烈。
But a retrograde Mercury in Gemini will still talk more than a person with Mercury in Taurus.
但是即便水星逆行，它如果落在双子座，它也会比水星正行在金牛座的人，他们更喜欢说话。
See, even though less than the other one with Mercury direct in Gemini, but still it's Gemini.
虽然说这个水星逆行的这个人，他比水星正行的那个人在两者都在双子座，他比那个人说话说的少一些，他还是双子座的水星。
So don't think that someone with a retrograde Mercury in Gemini is going to be silent.
所以说，不要以为一个水星逆行的人，他就是在双子座的人，他就是一个沉默寡言的人。
But they might be more introspective.
但是他可能更有内省的能力。
They might take a little more time to think things through before they say them.
他们在说话之前可能会花更长的时间想一想怎么说。
I've seen, and I really don't know what the statistics would be on this, but amongst my clients, I've noticed a lot of times a sort of point of view from people with the retrograde Mercury that seems insightful to me.
我没有看过统计材料是怎么样讲的。我从我的客户里面看，就有水星逆行本命盘的人呢，这些人他们的观点似乎更有洞见一些。
Insightful in the sense that someone born with a retrograde Mercury in any sign.
那不论这个水星它在哪个星座逆行
，in any sign, able to look at things from a slightly different perspective.
他们不论在哪个星座的水星，当它逆行的时候，它好像都能从一个稍微有点不同的角度来看待问题。
Now, I'm not trying to say they're smarter. I'm not trying to say they're geniuses or anything like that.
我并没有说他们更聪明，或者是他们更有天分。
But I think it can be a very valuable point of view.
但是我觉得他们可能会有一个比较有价值的观点。
However, sometimes a person born with a retrograde Mercury can have a little bit of a challenge in learning how to explain something to others.
不过呢，如果这个人他的水星逆行，对他来说，他要把一个事情解释给别人听，对他来说是有一点点挑战。
There's a tendency to start at the conclusion of something and explain it from the conclusion backwards.
他有一点点想就是说从这个结论，然后往前推导这样的方式来思考问题。
Was anybody in here born with a retrograde Mercury? Anybody right here?
我们有没有同学有星盘上是水星逆行的人呢？这儿有一位同学。
Okay. Sometimes this can mean when you go to tell a story, you might almost end up with the last page and then it becomes a flashback.
有时候这可能意味着，比方说你讲故事，你可能是从这个故事最后一篇开始往前讲。
You might say, I don't know, you might say, my boss is a very invasive man. He wants to know what makes other people tick.
你可能说，我的老板呢，他是一个特别有侵略性的人，他想了解知道什么能够触动别人。
I saw this the other day as I was leaving work.
那一天呢，当我下班的时候，我看到这一点。
I've been observing this all afternoon, so you're starting to work.
就是我整个下午我都其实在观察。
In fact, I noticed that after lunch, when he did such and such, you know.
然后我注意到呢，在吃完午饭后，他做了什么什么什么。
And this reminded me of what I'd seen him do in the morning.
这提醒我想到了他在早上他做了点什么事儿。
Now, that may sound kind of crazy.
这听起来好像有点
But it's not. It's just a different way of thinking things through.
其实这就是一种不同的来考虑问题的方式，讲问题的方式。
And it's not always that literal. I'm simplifying this.
而且也不是说完全就是像这样的表现出来，我只不过我在简化。
But I do think people with retrograde Mercury tend to be more thoughtful.
不过我觉得有逆行水星的人呢，他们更考虑周全。
Now, there's a statement about retrograde lunar nodes.
有人问那个逆行的南北焦点。
The nodes are retrograde almost all the time.
南北焦点
The true node.
真实的南北焦点，它基本上一直都在逆行。
In fact, the average motion of the lunar node, the average motion is 3 minutes retrograde a day.
平均是一天是 three minutes 3分，平均是每天3分一个南北焦点。
3 minutes of the zodiac a day backwards.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And this is because of the motion of the Earth as it goes around the sun. The moon, each time it comes back, has slipped a little further back in the sun.
这是因为是I'm sorry.
It's because remember what the lunar nodes are. Okay.
就是你要记得南北焦点它是什么意思。
The lunar nodes measure where the moon in its orbit around the Earth crosses the larger orbit of the Earth around the sun.
月亮焦点就是月亮围绕地球的运转的这个轨道，和地球运转太阳的轨道的这个焦点。
You need one more hand to show this. You need 3 hands to show this.
有位同学在这。
How many of you Virgos are out there doing this thing right now? It's like Tai Chi with the planets here.
刚才我们这儿有位同学想跟大家展示一下这个月亮焦点是如何形成的。
Yes. So orbiting around your head, you can make your head the third hand, you know. Okay.
或者是你把脑袋当做一个球。
That's right. Okay. What happens is very simple. Each time the moon crosses the orbit of the Earth around the sun, the ecliptic, it's a little further back in the zodiac.
就是说每次月亮过那个地球经月亮的地球照太阳的这个圈的时候呢，它每次都往回一点点。
So if you're keeping an index, which is what the lunar nodes are, remember we're talking measurement here. If you're keeping an index of where the moon crosses the ecliptic every time, you see that it's moving backwards.
所以说呢，如果是你去做一个标记的话，你就看好像这个月亮焦点一直是往后退的。
Now occasionally you look at your ephemeris,
偶尔你看一下你的星历表。
Yeah, and you'll see that during the month, that the lunar nodes can also go direct. They retrograde, and then they're direct for a little while, then they're retrograde for a while, then they're direct a little while.
有时候你也可以看到月亮焦点正行。
So you've got a lot of moving parts here in the solar system. So there's a little flexibility in how you measure this, because you've got the moon moves a little this way faster, and then slower, so there's variations in this motion.
因为这个有很多的行星在运转，所以说有时候月亮有时候快点，有时候慢点，所以说有不同的这样的它的速度。
Okay, so you got some little variations here.
所以说有一些不同
Okay.
变化。
All right.
And somebody
Yes,
also.
a 3D. That's right. A 3D would be cool if I could get a 3D of the lunar nodes. I've searched for those 3Ds. I haven't found them yet. I've got some diagrams in the next class on the nodes.
That student asked about, could you explain something about Venus and Mars retrograding natal chart? What do you mean introspect? What do you mean?
Oh, sure. Venus is probably not as actively social when it's retrograde. It's a little more internal, little less outgoing.
那么内化的意思呢，就是比如说以金星为例，金星是一个去社交的行星，但它逆行的时候呢，它那个社交性没那么强了，它更内向一些。
So think about how that might work in interpretation.
你想想，如果在我们解读的时候会是什么样子？
Say, for example, you're looking at a chart and a person has Venus in Capricorn.
比如说你看到一个星图，这个人的金星在摩羯座。
Now, Venus in Capricorn is not a real outgoing, hey, let me give you a hug.
金星在摩羯座本来就不是一个特别外向的这样一个表达，他不会说，哎，我来跟你，咱们俩拥抱一下。
It's not that kind of Venus.
这个不是摩羯座的金星，不是这样的行为方式。
Now, suppose someone was born with a retrograde Venus in Capricorn.
假如这个人他的金星在摩羯座又是逆行。
Now they're even a little more cautious, a little more reserved, you know.
那么这个人呢，他就会更谨慎一些，更保守一些。
They're looking out at the group, going, people are hugging.
他们可能看到这个团体里面大家都在拥抱。
Is this okay? I think. Is this all right to hug you?
就是说拥抱别人一下行不行呢？
Everyone seems to be hugging. I don't want to hug badly.
好像大家都在拥抱，我不想就是好像拥抱的不太好。
I'll watch how they hug.
我先看一看他们是怎么拥抱的吧。
I can do that.
我能做到。
Okay. This is a retrograde Venus in Capricorn.
这是一个在摩羯座的金星。
Okay. Now Mars.
的金星。
Now let's think about Mars.
那我们再想想火星。
Everybody has a Mars somewhere.
每个人都有火星在星盘上。
And Mars is how we take action.
火星是我们行动的方式，采取行动。
If you have Mars in Taurus, you take your action slowly.
如果你的火星在金牛座，你比较慢的采取行动。
Don't push me.
别催我。
I saw a grandmother with a son who probably had a lot of Taurus the other day.
我看到一个外祖母，跟他儿子在一起。
This little boy.
这个外孙。
Probably had Mars in Taurus.
可能是他的火星在金牛座。
he was walking much slower than his grandmother wanted him to.
这个小男孩他走路特别慢，比他那个祖母想让他期待的慢得多。
And every time she tried to pull him forward,
每次那个祖母就会想拉那个小男孩往前走。
he planted his feet.
然后那个小男孩呢，就把他的2个脚紧紧的扎根在地上。
And she would pull backwards.
那个他反而会被他往后拉。
So it was sort of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It was,
好像走2步往回退1步的那种感觉。
I watched them for a while. They were in front of me.
因为他们走在我前面，所以我看了他们一会儿。
Of course, I caught up with them and went around them.
然后我就撵上他们，就是绕着他们走过去。
I have Mercury. I have Mars in Sagittarius.
我的火星在射手座。
I wasn't gonna wait all day for that.
我不可能一直等着他们在前面走。
But imagine if this boy had a retrograde.
但你想想，如果这个火星呢是逆行在金牛座，
Grandmother might have had to sit down.
这个祖母没准都得坐下来。
So we're talking about the way something behaves, and with a retrograde, it's going to internalize it more. It's going to change the expression of it.
我们谈到这个人的行为，逆行呢会让改变一下他的行为，他更内化一些，就没那么向外发。
Because we think of Mars always as being this energy that is about aggressiveness in some way, how we assert ourselves.
因为如果我们想到火星，它总是一个进取性的、进攻性的这样一个行星，不论它在哪里。
If you have Mars in Gemini, you can say sharp things to people if you're angry.
你如果火星在双子座的话，如果你生气的话呢，你可以很刺耳的语言
You can
说别人。
cut them with words.
你可以用语言给秒杀他们。
Suddenly you've said 6 or 7 things, little cuts.
就
This
是
is
说，
not Scorpio. These little cuts, Gemini.
就是说，可能是一瞬间你就说了，就是说出了6、7个小刀了哈，就是小的给他们划伤他们。
Little
因为
paper,
这不是天蝎座啊。
little paper cuts.
就是给他们一些像那个纸划过的划伤的一样。
Okay, but if it's retrograde Mars in Gemini, not so many paper cuts.
如果是这个人的火星是在双子座逆行的话呢，就不会有那么多的纸的划伤了。
Maybe not so many, but maybe deeper.
没那么多的伤口，但是可能更深一些。
More thoughtful paper cuts.
我会给你更一个深思熟虑的一个小伤口啊。
You know, it's retrograde.
这就是逆行。
Dragging the paper in there a little bit.
就拿着那张纸，划他们一下。
You thought about that one before you said it, didn't you?
他说你原来你就这么说过是吧？现在你说出来了。
Ouch.
你原来就这么想过，现在你说出来了。
Okay. So you can imagine retrograde Mars in Scorpio.
你可以想想，如果这个人的水星落在天蝎座，又会如何了？
All right, we won't take this too far.
我们还不要讲得太远了吧？
All right, so this gives you an idea of how retrogrades function. All right, the sign is still the most important thing.
就是说星座仍然是最重要的即便是逆行。
Okay. What else have we got going on here?
Student asked.
1 second, we'll bring you up here.
Jupiter.
Mhm.
Jupiter takes 7 months in Aries during 2010 and 2011.
Was it moving fast through Aries? Sometimes that happens.
It takes 7 months in Aries.
What year?
2010 and 2011.
Okay.
During that time.
这
Okay.
个同学说，木星在2010年、2011年期间在白羊座运行，总共是只有7个月。这个不会只有7个月。
Oh, that's because he was in Aries and then went back into Pisces.
这是因为木星逆行了。
So you have to add it up. In other words, Jupiter went into Aries on June the 6th, 2010.
就是说，木星在2010年的6月how much?
June the 6th, 2010.
June the 6th.
6月6号，2010年6月6号进入白羊座。
See, I can find that out really quickly in my itinerary.
你看，我可以立刻在我的星历表上找到这个时间。
All right. And then what happened is Jupiter went out of Aries. I have to adjust my eyes here. On September the 9th, 2010.
然后呢，他在2010年9月6号呢，他就出了白羊座，逆行到双鱼座去了。
And then it went back into Aries on January 22nd, 2011.
然后呢，他又在2011年1月的时候又回到了白羊座。
And stayed in Aries through to June of 2011.
那么他直到停在白羊座呢，直到是2011年的6月。
1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5. And let's see, I'm going to add them up. 5, 6, 7. You're right. About a pretty good math. Very good. I would say Jupiter moved very fast to Aries, stayed there less than 8 months.
确实是木星在白羊座走的速度还是比较快的，在那儿大概是how many months?
8 months.
在8个月。
Less than 8. Slightly less than 8.
少于8个月。
Very good. We need to give a red star to this person. They're using their ephemeris.
这位同学他是真的看了他的心理表，给他
So
一个红五星。
you can get some variables there, but it averages out to about a year in each sign. It's like 11.9 years in the cycle. You divide it up. It's 11 months per sign and this kind of thing.
Okay.
Sometimes it'll move faster, like it did in Aries. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Going faster through Aries. But you know, it varies because it depends. It's not always going to go fastest through Aries.
但是呢，并不是一进那个白羊座，它就会过得快哈。
It really depends on where the retrogrades occur.
还是取决于大概是什么时候逆行。
So you've got to look at that ephemeris and see.
所以说，大家一定要看星历表来看这一点。
Everybody wants Jupiter to move the slowest through its sign.
每个人都希望木星过自己星座的时候慢一点。
Of course, Aries, I don't know.
但是呢，对于那个白羊座的人来说，我就不太清楚了。
Was Jupiter in Aries? I didn't notice.
木星真的在白羊座吗？我怎么没有发现呢？
Guess I missed it.
也许我就错过了吧。
I'm sure I had fun though.
不过毫无疑问，我也是很开心那段时间。
All right. I'm sure you did. All right. I know some Aries that had fun in 2010.
He wonders the long duration of the time, whether it's related to
it's because of the retrograde, the retrograde cycle.
这个时间长短还是主要是取决于逆行周期。
See, it all depends on where the retrograde occurs. If you went back,
还是取决于到底这个逆行是发生在什么时候。
I suspect that you have some Virgo in your chart.
这位同学他可能是星图上有一些处女座的元素吧，
Or a strong Mercury-Saturn aspect.
或者有一个很强的水土的相位。
That's a good thing. You'll get more red stars in this.
这个是非常好的优点。
But what I would suggest that you do is go back not only through this ephemeris, but also through this one.
所以说大家呢要2本星历表一块看哈。
Look back over the 100 years.
看看过去100年。
From 2000 to 1900.
从1900年到2000年。
That's right. Stay up all night.
晚上你就都可以通宵来看。
And study this.
学一学。
And find out, did Jupiter move fastest through Aries every time?
看看是不是木星一到白羊座就会很快的就过去了。
That would be a cool thing to know, actually.
这个很酷。
You'll get some more red stars with that.
你会得到更多的红五星。
Seriously, and I would say, I would like a little report on that.
如果你能给我们一个报告就更好了。
And all of you are welcome to do that.
欢迎大家都能去做这样的研究。
Cool. All right. This is how we learn, by asking questions.
这就是我们学习的方式，要问问题，通过问题来学习。
I love the questions like that. All right. Anything else on these planets before we? Oh, we have a question here from. You have to come up though because you're part of the peanut gallery here. That's what we call that in the U.S. Peanut gallery.
Hello. My question is kind of, I don't know, is it kind of stupid because I want to know, has the sun ever retrograde? No. Because it can.
No, it's actually the Earth moving around the sun. So it would be the Earth retrograde.
So how does it?
But the Earth is never retrograde.
Right.
That would throw us all out.
Okay.
因为同学问那个太阳是否转了，说太阳。
It's not a stupid question, though.
因为其实是地球绕着太阳转。
A lot of times, because as astrologers, we get used to thinking of the sun as the moving body, and of course it's not. The sun is actually turning on its axis too, but the Earth is going around the sun.
因为作为占星师，我们常常就会觉得好像是太阳转，实际上不是太阳转，是地球在绕着太阳转。虽然太阳也绕着自己的轴转。
So you wouldn't have a retrograde sun, you'd have a retrograde Earth, but you can't have a retrograde Earth.
所以说你其实不可能有逆行的太阳，你最多有逆行的地球，但是地球也不可能逆行，不然我们大家都被甩出去了。
The Earth has no brakes to slam on here. If it did, it would immediately destroy our atmosphere, and we would all be dead in a short time.
如果地球要逆行的话，我们立刻都会死光光。
It would just fling everything into space, and that would be it. The life force in this corner of the universe would have to find a different solar system.
我们的生命，我们地球上的生命就要再找到另外一个太阳系去生存了。Okay, I think we need to move on.
I'm ready to, yes, but I wanted to make sure that everyone.
Otherwise we don't have time.
All right, here we go. All right, let's take a look at some other important features of aspects.
我们看看就是相位的一些重要的特征吧。
You'll hear the term applying and separating aspects.
你们会听到入相位和出相位这个词的。
What does that mean?
这意味着什么呢？
Applying means before the aspect is exact.
那么入相位是指在精确成像之前。
And separating means after the aspect is exact.
那么出相位是指在精确成像之后。
Right? And the orb of aspects is very interesting because when we talk about an orb, we really mean, of course, 7 degrees applying and 7 degrees separating.
所以说允许度是比较有意思的。所以当我们说到入相位、出相位的时候，我们指的就是7度入相和7度出相。
So you see, the span is actually not just 7; it's actually 14 degrees.
所以整个容许度的范围实际上覆盖了14度。
That's pretty wide.
这是非常相当宽的一个度数了。
That's why a lot of times when people say, "Oh, 7 degrees," it's a little tight, isn't it?
所以说有人说，哎呀，这个7度这是不是太紧了？
Well, not really.
其实并没有那么紧。
Okay. So how can we tell quickly or easily whether an aspect is applying or separating?
我们怎么能很快的看一下这个相位是入相还是出相呢？
And then we're going to talk about what that means.
然后我们再讲一讲这到底是什么意思。
Okay. Here we go. We've got Mia here, who was born with Mars at 13 Aquarius and Pluto at 9 Scorpio.
那米娅呢？这个人，她的火星在水瓶座13度，4分了在天蝎座9度的女王星。
Mars is the faster moving planet.
火星是那个快速在2个行星中更快速的行星。
Mars is already 4 degrees past 9 degrees of Aquarius.
火星已经过了水瓶座9度了。
So Mars has already made an exact square with Pluto.
所以说，火星已经跟女王星成过精准的4分相了。
If it's already made the exact aspect, it means the aspect is separating.
如果是已经成过精准的4分相的话呢，这时候的成像就是一个出相位的4分相。
Now I'm going to throw a curve at you. That's a baseball term. Let me say something. I'm going to give you an exception.
不过呢，给大家一个例外。
I should know better than to use a baseball analogy. Sorry. All right. What if Mars was retrograde?
但是如果是火星逆行又会如何呢？
Well, retrograde means Mars is now moving back towards the 9 degrees.
那么如果是火星逆行的话，也就是火星要慢慢的朝着9度去。
If Mars was retrograde in someone's natal chart, Mars, then it is applying to the aspect.
所以说呢，如果同样的这个相位，但是这个火星是逆行，实际上这个相位成的又是入相位了。
But you might say, but it already made the aspect.
但是你可能说，哎，其实它也成过这个4分相了呀。
And I would say, yes, and it's moving back to make it again.
那我的回答是没错，它过去确实是成过精准的4分相了，但是现在呢，它又要回去再去成这个精准的4分相。
Now this may seem like a fine point.
这看起来好像是一个比较微妙的这一点。
But applying aspects do have a little more force, more energy with them than separating.
不过呢，入相位会比出相位的它的就是说它的力量或者它的能量更大一些。
It's kind of like something called the Doppler effect. Do you know what the Doppler effect is?
好像就要像那个 Doppler 这样的效应，多普勒效应。
It's about sound.
这就是跟声音的有关。
You hear a train coming towards you at the train station.
你在那个火车站听见这个火车渐渐的开过来。
You hear it a long way off.
你在很远的地方就能听到它。
As it approaches.
在它越来越近的时候。
And then speeds by.
然后它就很快速的开过去了。
The sound of the train will fade faster after it's gone by you than when it was approaching.
就是火车的声音，当它经过你之后呢，它比火车朝你开的时候，它更快的好像就消失了。
Scientists call this the Doppler effect.
那个科学家叫它多普勒效应。
I'm sure all of you know about this.
应该大家都听说过吧
No? Okay. Anyway, you can, if you're at a train station sometime and it's not a train that's stopping, I mean like the subway, you're at a train station and there's another train speeding by, you can play with this. You can say, all right, I'm going to time, I'm a Virgo, I'm going to get out my watch and I'm going to start measuring when that train comes, when I hear it and when it leaves.
所以说，如果是你是个处女座，你在火车站的时候，如果一个车呢经过这个站台，你可以去看一下你的表，什么时候你第一次听到这个火车的声音，然后呢它到了你这儿，然后什么时候当火车离开你的时候呢，这个声音消失了，你可以看一下。
All right, here we go. Here's some more examples.
我们再举更多的例子。
Tanya, she's got Mercury at 7 degrees Leo, trine Neptune at 13 Sag.
那么拆亚呢，它的水星在狮子座7度，3合在射手座13度的海王星。
Mercury is the faster moving planet.
水星是运转速度较快的行星。
Mercury is 6 degrees from 13.
水星离13度还有6度。
So we subtract 7 from 13, we get 6, right?
13减7等于6。
Mercury has not yet made the exact trine.
水星还没有尚未准确成像。
So in this case, Mercury is applying to the trine.
在这个例子中，水星是入相位。
Are we surprised that Tanya has Mercury in Leo, by the way?
我们会就是看这个星图，我们觉得水星这个人水星在狮子座，我们觉得惊讶吗？
She looks like Mercury in Leo.
他看上去像一个水星在狮子座的
But
人。
it's trine Neptune. Maybe she's at least singing on key.
所以说
Singing on key, meaning the right pitch, right key.
就是说他可能不走音哈，他因为他水星是3合海王星。
Okay. All right. So, what about Tian?
那天又会如何呢？
All right. Oh, and by the way, we've got some little questions over here. We should probably deal with these questions. What's that
就
question?
入相位和出相位，先说一下，入相位和出相位跟那个见盈见亏是不一样的啊。
不一样。
Someone asked about the waning, the separating and
Oh no, waning and waxing have nothing to do with applying or separating. They're totally
入相位和
different.
出相位和盈相位和盈亏是完全不同的。
Okay. Waxing and waning has to do with the phase of a cycle.
就是它盈亏呢更和这个相位的周期是相关的。
Applying and separating is specific to the aspect.
那么实际上我们说到出相呢，它是和精确成像这个的关系。
But that's also a very good question.
不过这也是一个很好的问题。
What other questions do we have? Anything in there that looks really powerful, significant? Yeah, I want to answer your questions tonight as much as possible.
我们希望能够更多的来回答这个问题。逆行的入相位和不逆行的入相位有什么不一样？Someone asked when retrograde, the applying aspect, is it different if not retrograde?
No.
就是逆行的入相位和不逆行的入相位没有什么差异。
I mean, yes and no, but basically in the natal chart, no.
这个问题呢，可以说也有些差异，不过如果是我们就本命盘而言，没什么差异。
Okay. The only thing I would add to that is that you will notice, of course, as I pointed out, that when a planet is retrograde, particularly like Mars or Venus, which retrograde the least, that you'll get Mars or Venus in one sign for a longer time than normally.
就是说，如果是他们逆行的话呢，它可能在一个星座里面，它的时间更长一些。
what that means is you'll get what I call these little subgroups of people in a generation who there'll be more of them that have Mars in one sign as a result. See?
那么结果就是说，可能这一小部分人，他们的火星呢都在一个星座。
This is interesting statistically, behaviorally. This is interesting.
也可能从统计上来说，这群人的行为模式呢有些有意思的地方。
I mean, right now, all the babies born since December the 8th have Mars in Libra.
就是说，从去年12月开始，所有现在出生的小孩，他们的火星都是在天秤座逆行。
And this is still true through to the latter part of July.
就是直到7月份出生的孩子都有这个现象。
Now, I happen to think it's great for there to be a lot of people in the world with Mars and Libra.
我觉得地球上有很多火星在天秤座的人是件好事儿。
And I know I'm being idealistic when
当
I
然，我认为我这么说的时候，也是有一些理想主义了。
so I'm guilty of that.
所以说有些内疚。
But we need as many peacemakers in the world as we can get.
但是呢，我们希望这个世界上有更多的和平主义者，
So if we're
缔
getting
造和平的人。
an influx of peacemakers, I'm all for it.
所以说突然有一大群的缔造和平的人出生，我当然是非常赞同的。
Now I know some of you will say, but oh my God, they were born with the cardinal cross.
但是有人说，哇，我的老天呐，他们星盘上有大十字啊！
Yes, which means more challenge for peacekeepers.
没错，这就是说对这种缔造和平的人，他们面临的挑战更多。
Maybe peacekeepers who are really good at handling pressured situations.
可能这些人对应有压力的状况，他们更有能力。
We need peacekeepers who are good at handling pressured situations.
我们希望有一些这样缔造和平的人呢，他们能够有应对压力的能力。
So I'm expecting a lot from this crop of babies.
所以说呢，对这一大帮这个婴儿，我还是对他们有很多的期望的。
I just did a chart for one last week.
我上周还看了一个这样的孩子的图。And some students ask,
Yes.
in some books they say the applying aspect means things that hasn't happened, but for the separating aspect it means it has happened.
Well, it's a very interesting concept. I would like an example of that.
就是这个有个同学说，书上说入相位是尚未发生的事情，出相位是已经发生的事儿，这样理解对吗？老师说这是一个有趣的概念，能给举个例子吗？
Because we're talking about a birth chart here, a natal chart.
因为我们现在在谈论的是一个出生图，
How could something have already happened unless you're referring to reincarnation?
就是说这个事儿还没发生，又是什么意思呢？除非是你说的是转世这种事儿，
Or the 9 months inside the mom.
或者是他在怀胎的时候的事情啊。
Yes, that was the day that loud truck went by. I remember.
就那一天是一个声音很大的一个卡车开过，我还记得那一天。
Right. No, I mean, I don't know what you mean.
所以说，就是这位同学，你需要举一个例子。
Who said that? Let's call on them.
OK，
See, this
这
is what
个
happens. This is the fun part. I get to call on you when you ask
就
me
是说，
something.
这位同学，你能看到那个书上有怎么举这个例子吗？张慧
Okay, call
张慧茹。
Zhang Wei Ru.
对。
Zhang Wei Ru. Zhang Wei Ru, stay right
现在
there.
对
Don't run away.
我们要打开你的麦克哈，你给我们讲一下这个书上具体是怎么讲的。
Right. Call them up. See if their mic works.
看看他的麦克。Oh, she doesn't have mic.
No mic? Oh, that's a likely story.
嗯。
Okay, all right.
Oh, it's in Sue Tompkins' book.
Oh, is it? Did Sue say this?
哼。
Well, if Sue said it, I will ask her what she meant.
如果是苏说的话呢，那我就问问苏他到底什么意思吧。
She's probably referring to transits, I would think, but maybe not. Maybe if it's in her aspect book, I'll ask her what she meant.
如果在他的顺逆皆易的人生是 aspect book。
Okay.
哼。
Sue and I agree on almost everything.
那么
Astrology.
我们两个大概在占星学上大部分都是一致的意见。
We don't agree about the Irish, but we agree about everything.
我们除了对爱尔兰人的观点不一样。
All right.
Okay.
Okay. So, let's go. Is there another question? You think should I go on? Here's another one there. Do they procrastinate? Oh, somebody wants to know if a person with Mars in Libra or retrograde Mars in Libra would procrastinate a lot.
就是如果火星在天秤座逆行，它会不会特别喜欢拖延？
Maybe.
可能会。
However, some of them are going to have Mars opposite Uranus.
但是有些孩子他们的火星会正好对向天王星，
I'm not really sure how that works in terms of procrastination.
所以我不知道如果说是拖延的话，这个是怎么运作。
Uranus is about being a risk taker, being impulsive, moving very fast, very quick.
因为天王星呢是一个非常冲动的、很快速行动的这样一个喜欢冒险的行星。
Okay. So, I don't know. A bunch of procrastinating peacemakers. I would rather have procrastinating peacemakers than at least then it's taking a while, and that means we're still having peace.
就有更多的拖延症的缔造和平的人也不错哈，至少这个时候我们还有和平。
All right. I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, well, hopefully not, but there's always conflict somewhere. And this could be someone who negotiates. Again, Mars in Libra could be someone who can negotiate in pressured or conflicted situations.
就是火星在天秤座，这个说明呢，他可能在一个非常有压力的，而且非常纠结的这样的状态下，他还能够去跟别人谈判。
Could be corporate negotiations. It doesn't just have to be government. It can be corporate.
就比如说可能是在公司的谈判呀等等。
Okay. All right. All right. What about TN? Let's go back here to Tarzan. You don't think we do? Because you don't like them?
No, I think we
All right. Okay.
I think everyone can.
You have these examples of Mercury and Venus, so you can easily see from these examples. But I want to do something with them. Okay.
就是还有另外2个例子啊，大家都看到这个例子了。
Now, I threw something else in here other than applying separating because I want you to remember what's important.
那么我还在这里面添加了一些东西，因为我希望你们更了解什么是更重要的。除了录像和出像之外。
Because the pictures are a giveaway, these may seem like ridiculously simple questions.
因为这些图呢，就好像把我的答案都暴露出来了，所以看起来这个问题是特别的荒唐的问题。
But I know that some of you asked Duke this past weekend questions about the semisextile. You were sort of like, I don't understand the semisextile.
但是我知道呢，有人在上周问 Duke 关于半六分相的问题、12分相的问题。
And that's a very good question.
他们不太理解这个问题，这是好问题。
So look at this first question here.
所以我们看看第一个问题吧。
It says, which of the above has access to an ample inventory of appliances?
上述哪一个拥有获得充足家用电器存货的渠道？
Well, we know it's the guy standing there with the refrigerator and washing machine.
我们知道这肯定是下面这个图啊，这个人又有洗衣机，
Right.
又有洗碗机，
But what we
又有冰箱。
should also recognize is that we are using the word access.
但是呢，我们也应该去想到，我们用了这种去有这样的渠道去接近。
Access to an ample inventory.
就是说能够去接近这样存货的渠道。
Let's explore those key words carefully.
我们小心的来看一下这些关键词。
We're talking about Venus and Jupiter.
我们现在谈的是金星和木星。
Okay? Jupiter means abundance,
木星的意思
more of something.
更丰盛的、更多的东西。
This guy is a salesman, isn't he?
这个人是一个销售员。
Shinbo is a salesman.
金波是一个销售员。
Are we surprised? He's got Venus and Sag. He says, lady, we've got a sale going on here on these washing machines.
我们会惊讶吗？这个人的金星在射手座，他说：“嗨，女士，我们现在正好在这些那个洗衣机在减价，有促销。
And if you would like to see different models of washing machines, we have a lot of them.
如果你想看不同那个品种的洗衣机，我们这儿有很多类型的。
See, Jupiter and Scorpio. This store is packed with washing machines and refrigerators.
木星在天蝎座，我们这个店里面都是那个洗衣机还有电冰箱。
So they got a sale going on.
所以这时候呢还在促销。
And Shinbo is going to do his best to move as many of those refrigerators and washing machines out that door that day as he can.
那么他这一天呢，他要尽可能的把这些存货都销售出去。
Because he gets a commission.
这样的话，他就能拿到佣金了。
Now, this is a rewarding aspect. I want you to realize that a semi-sextile with Venus and Jupiter could be a money maker.
那么这样一个金木的12分相可以是赚钱的一个相位。
I not only threw this a simple example in there for the word access, but I'm giving you a big clue about money.
我不仅仅是告诉大家它有这样一个接近存货的这样的渠道，而且呢，这里面还有跟钱相关的，有跟钱相关的线索。
Quite frankly, the access that a semi-sextile can give you is access to money.
实际上，12分相可以给你的一个就是说，就是能够接近钱这样一个渠道。
And it can also be intuition.
同时也是给你直觉的这样一个渠道。
A sixth sense.
就是你有第六感。
Okay. Now, what two signs do we associate in the natural zodiac with the semi-sextile?
在自然黄道中和12分相相关的2个星座是什么星座？
Taurus and Pisces.
金牛座还有双鱼座。
Okay. If you see somebody's natal chart and they have personal planets that form these semi-sextiles, look at them very carefully.
如果是你在一个星图上，它有一些个人行星和其他行星有12分相的相位，
These
你要
people
仔细的去看。
may be good guessers.
那么这个人呢，可能是很好的能够有第六感的人，他们猜的东西的能力很强。
Right.
猜测的能力很强。
They can sometimes be good guessers when it comes to money,
有时候甚至对于钱的，他们猜测能力都很强。
depending on other factors in the chart.
这也取决于他们星图上其他的元素。
Or they can get access to things. They know where to find things.
或者是他能够知道去到哪儿找到什么样的东西，
And it's easy access.
而且他是很容易就能找到。
And it's also a guess, or what we call in English sometimes a hunch.
他就是有这样一个本能的直觉。
You know, it might even be that they have a hunch about what horse is going to win the race.
可能他们对于哪匹马能够赛马能够获得冠军，他们有很好的直觉。
Suppose Shinbo has Venus and Sagittarius in the 5th house, or maybe he's got Jupiter and Scorpio in the 5th house.
假如说这个辛波这个人，他的金星在射手座，在第5宫，或者是他的木星在第5宫天蝎座，
Then he likes to play with money. He likes to gamble.
那这个人呢，他就喜欢去赌博。
Well, it's not enough that Shinbo has Venus and Sagittarius, but he's got the 5th house too.
就是说他不仅金星在射手座，而且他还在第5宫。
So where is he going to go with all the commission money he makes from selling refrigerators and washing machines?
所以说他靠那个销售电冰箱和洗衣机赚到的佣金，赚到的这些佣金，他花到哪去呢？
He's going to go make more money gambling,
他会用到赌博上赚更多的钱。
you know, or at least do better than maybe some of his friends.
他是可能会比他的一些朋友能够有更好的运气。
They complain, Shinbo always breaks even. He never really loses any money. Did you notice that?
他们可能说，嘿，辛波好像赌博的时候，他总是能赌个平手，他好像从来没有失过手。
We all go to Macau and he still has money.
我们都去澳门赌钱了，但是他最后还能兜里有余钱。
Okay, all right. So this was my thinking when I put this example in there. Believe me, there are reasons why I do it this way.
那么这就是我把这个例子放在这儿的原因。
For example, let's look at question number 2. Everybody have a better understanding now of the semi-sextile.
现在大家对12分相更有感觉了吗？
I think it's an overlooked minor aspect.
我觉得这个相位呢，大家好像常常都漏看了。
Pay attention to them. You'll notice some things.
你要注意这个相位，你们可能会注意到更多的东西。
Okay. Is this just a statement right here, or are they asking another question? No? Okay, cool. All right. Question number 2. Who is working on making herself more confident physically?
谁是努力想自己在身体层面更有自信的这个人呢？
Well, we know, of course, that's Mia. She's the only one there doing It can be karate or it could be any martial art.
那么我们知道是尼亚啊，他可能在打空手道
Kung fu.
或者是他在做别的运动。
Right. Okay. But think about this statement a little bit. Here we got somebody might say, well, wait a minute. She's got Mars in Aquarius. Shouldn't she be more intellectual?
有人可能说，哎，等一下，这个尼亚的火星在水瓶座，他是不是更喜欢智力上的活动？
Well, she probably is pretty smart. She might be. She might have this objectivity of Aquarius.
他可能是挺聪明的，他可能有这个水瓶座的这个客观性。
But maybe she uses this objectivity, Aquarian objectivity, is also part of her natural defense mechanism.
但是呢，这个他的水瓶座的客观性呢，也是他自然的防御体系。
Me is the cool one in the martial arts class.
他是在武术上面那个特别酷的那个人。
She seems to sweat less than anybody.
他看上去好像是都不如别人流汗流的更多。
That's very Aquarian, isn't it?
这非常水瓶座的表
I'm
现。
too cool to sweat.
我这么酷，我才不会流那么多汗呢。
Just too cool, you know?
我太酷了。
Right. And so, but here it's square Pluto, so we have an aspect of pressure.
但是呢，这个火星是4分冥王星的，所以这是一个压力的相位。
Am I strong enough? Could I defend myself?
我够不够壮？我能不能防卫？
Okay.
保护我自己。
Right. So she's probably very perceptive. She's got Mars in Aquarius.
所以说他的火星在水瓶座，
If she's observing a group of people that look threatening,
所以说呢，他可能是他如果看到一群人，这群人看上去很有威胁性的话，
she probably notices which ones she could take down first.
他可能立刻能够观察到，在这群人里面，他能首先把谁给打趴下。
Here we're combining the Pluto, which is survival,
这时候我们把这个幸存者就是冥王星，
with Mars about her power. What is my power to survive?
和火星它的力量联合在了一起，就是我幸存下来的力量在哪里？
With her ability to observe, to have perspective, which is Aquarius.
就是说他能够有水瓶座的这样能力，就去观察的这样一个能力。
Particularly to observe groups of people and how they behave. This is Aquarius.
特别是观察一个人群的行为模式，因为这毕竟是水瓶座。
She can probably tell whether a group looks threatening or not threatening.
他可能是一眼就看出来哪个群体更有威胁性，还
And
是没有威胁性。
who is the threatening one in the group?
在这个群体中，谁是最有威胁性的人？
Isn't that interesting?
这是不是很有趣呢？
All of that you could know just from this aspect.
仅从这样一个项目上，大家都可以得到这些信息。
Okay. Let's look at the other questions real quickly.
我们很快的看一下其他的问题。
Okay, question number 3 is, who has natural pitch? Well, we already talked a little bit about that.
谁有天生的好嗓音？我们刚才也讲到了，
It's Tanya.
在潘亚，
Or Tanya. She's got that Mercury trine Neptune.
他的水星是3分海王星。
A trine means ease.
3分的意思就是很轻易的就有，
It can mean a talent.
这也意味着他有这样的才华天分。
Having perfect pitch, or being able to hear tones and harmonies easily, is a talent.
他能够天生就有这样的好嗓音，他的五音都是准的，这也是他的他天生就有这样的能力。
Some people have to work at it.
那有人他必须不断的练习才能有这样的能
Some
力。
people can almost never hear them.
有的人他那个天生五音都不全，从来都听不清楚。
And other people hear them so well that when they hear somebody not do it, it's like, ow.
有的人呢，他的特别音准特别好，所以当他们听到别人唱歌音不准的时候，他们就觉得痛苦死了。
Okay. All right. So here we have, of course, we talked about this a while ago. It's Mercury and Leo. We have the show off, you know.
而且这个水星是在狮子座，所以说他有点显摆。
She likes to go to, the karaoke.
他喜欢去唱卡拉 OK，
All right. Sing for party. This is great.
在聚会上面唱。
All right. No problem. It's an easy one, isn't it? One more question.
另外最后一个问题，
can get this to work. It's at the top of this page, or it was. I guess it's back now. Here it is. Number 4. Whose lab work notes are copied by others in chemistry class?
在化学课上，谁的实验室工作笔记被其他人抄袭了？
Now we know this is Tian. He's the only one there that's in the chemistry class.
我们知道这是天，因为它是这个图上面就有这个化学实
And you don't have to say, "Oh, I missed this one."
你不会说我做错了。
Please, okay. But why? What's this deal about somebody copying his notes, or why would Tian even have these good notes? What is this about?
为什么这个天他有很好的工作笔记呢？为什么他的笔记又会被别人抄袭了呢？
Mercury is where we can write things down, where we keep notes.
水星是我们把这个笔记记下来的这样一颗行星。
Mercury in Virgo would keep very exact notes.
水星在处女座的人，他们的笔记都非常的精准。
Mercury sextile Saturn in Scorpio would especially keep good notes in science, in chemistry, and research.
水星在处女座，特别是它跟天蝎座的土星形成四分相的时候，他们在科学课上啊，什么还有物理学上面，他们能够记非常准确的笔记。
This is a great aspect for a scientist, by the way.
换句话说，这是一个非常好的，就是科学家能拥有的相位。
He's got Saturn in Scorpio, so he naturally is interested in research.
土星在天蝎座，所以说自然的他会对研究感兴趣。
Scorpio likes to dig into things.
天蝎座喜欢挖掘一个事情，
Saturn is what you're serious about.
而土星呢又是你对什么非常认真。
Mercury in Virgo loves to analyze things.
水星在处女座喜欢分析，
He could be a chemist for the police department.
他也可以是在警察局的一个化学家。
A forensic chemist.
他是一个
Forensic meaning someone who, helps to investigate why someone died.
就是说法医。
Okay. All right. But again, what about the sextile, and what does that have to do with people copying notes?
那六分相有什么意思呢？就是别人抄他的笔记是什么意思呢？
Opportunity, right? Because the signs we associate with the sextile are Gemini and Aquarius.
因为我们把六分相是和双子座和水瓶座联系在一起的，
So it gets around that Tian keeps good notes.
所以说呢，这个天能够记很好的笔记，
And his notes eventually get passed around to everybody.
所以说后来他的笔记的大家都轮流传了一圈。
Okay. All right. So there we go. I wanted you to see my thinking on all of those.
我希望大家看到我在这些相位上是怎么思考的。
Okay. All right. Let's move in. Now we have the Nodo girl.
然后 Nodo Go 呢又问了一个问题了，
Oh, she's a pain sometimes. I'm telling you. All right. She says, aren't applying aspects more significant than separating aspects? Why isn't the orb of the separating aspect less? For example, so you read there.
入相位比出相位更重要吗？出相位的容许度为什么不比入相位小一些呢？例如为什么不是入相位的容许度7度，出相位容许度只有3度呢？这样整个容许度范围就是10度了。
Okay. Yes, an applying aspect we know has more momentum and more force.
没错，入相位确实是更有冲劲和推动力。
And guess what? There are some astrologers that will shorten the orb of the separating aspect. You can do that on your own program.
确实是有些占星师会缩小出相位的容许度。
If you use a Kepler software like I do, you can go in there and change the orbs and make them whatever you want them to be.
如果有人像我一样用 Kepler 这个软件的话呢，你可以到软件上去调一下，把那个出相位的容许度调小，你想让它多少都可以。
However, most astrologers do not do this.
不过呢，大多数占星师不会这么做。
Even though most astrologers do consider an applying aspect more significant than a separating aspect.
尽管大部分占星师都认为入相位比出相位更重要。
But here's the thing. You've got to pay attention to how close the aspect is to being exact. The closer to exact, the more significant it is.
然而，你必须注意相位的紧密度，相位越紧密越有力。
All right, we have another question here. Come on up. This is great.
又是我一个，我想让这个举一个例子，这个初相跟入相在出生图当中会有什么一个表现的不同？
Can you give example of the difference of separate and triaspect in natal chart?
Right. That's what we're about to do.
我们马上来举个例子。
Okay. Okay. Oh, there's a train going behind me. I could time it for the dot phone if I can. All right. Here we go. Example. Look at here's the moon is at 12 degrees of Sag and trine Mars.
这个是射手座12度的月亮单和狮子座10度的火星。
We can see that in this case that the moon is separating from the aspect because the moon, of course, moves faster than Mars.
我们知道呢，这是一个初相位的三分相。
Okay. We can see that Mercury is applying to the opposition to Mars.
我们也看到的那个水星呢是入相对冲火星。
Both aspects are in effect, aren't they?
这两个呢都是在容许度之内，都是发生效力的。
But the moon and Mars trine is closer.
但是呢，越火的这个相位呢，它的容许度的紧密度更小一些。
And this needs to be taken into account when considering how Mars functions for this person.
所以说呢，我们来想这个人的星图上火星的它是怎么样作用的呢？需要考虑到这一点。
Before we move on to the next aspect, let's discuss this one a little bit.
在我们讲下一个相位之前，我们先来讲一下这个相位。
Okay. This is somebody with Mars and Leo, right? 10 degrees Mars and Leo.
这个人呢，他的火星是在狮子座，是在狮子座10度33。
We have two bits of information about him here.
在这里面呢，我们有2个信息。
One of them is they got the moon in Sagittarius, trine Mars. The other one is they got Mercury in Aquarius, opposite Mars.
一个是这个月火的三分相，一个是水火的对分相。
Okay. How can you picture or imagine this behaving?
你可以想想，就这2个组合在一起，这个人他的行为模式是怎么样的？
We know that this person has Mars in Leo, so their style of action tends to be a little bit more dramatic.
我们知道这个人的火星在狮子座，所以说呢，他的行为方式他比较戏剧化一些。
More colorful.
多姿多彩。
This can be very stimulating for parties, for special events, or for show, public relations, lots of things.
对于聚会啊，或者是演出啊，或者是公共关系呀、等等等等，或者是特殊的这个活动啊，这都是这个火星都可以表现出来。
But we also know Mars is about how we assert ourselves and how we express our anger.
我们也知道火星是我们要怎么表达我们的立场和表现我们的愤怒的。
We see here that there is a tension aspect because Mercury is in Aquarius opposing Mars.
我们也看到这里面有一个张力的相位，因为在水瓶座的水星对分火星。
The opposition between Mercury and Mars could suggest a tendency to attract arguments or disagreements, differences of opinion, a different idea.
一个水火的这个对象呢，这个人呢可能会吸引来一些争辩，容易跟别人因为不同的观念而争论。
And guess what? This is probably true to a great extent. This person can probably debate ideas with you.
这可能是真的。这个人呢，他喜欢跟你辩论。
They listen to what you're saying, and then they say, you know, I was reading a scientific journal the other day, and the article said something completely different than the point that you're making.
他可能对你说，我前几天我还读了一个科学杂志，那上面他说的跟你刚才说的根本都不一样。
Okay. This is Mercury in Aquarius expressing itself. They read a scientific magazine last week. Who would do that?
这是一个水星在水瓶座的这样一个表达，他读了一个科学杂志。
Mercury in Aquarius.
这是谁会去读科学杂志呢？水星在水瓶的人。
What aspect, however, might keep an argument from getting out of hand?
那什么样的相位会让这个辩论呢会就是说不可开交，变得不可开交呢？
Let me ask it a different way.
我换句话再来问这个问题吧。
Would this person have a sense of humor?
那就要说这个人他有没有个幽默感呢？
Yes.
是的。
They have the moon in Sagittarius.
他的月亮在射手座。
You may not laugh at all their jokes.
可能是他们讲的笑话你不一定会笑。
But they're going to laugh.
但是他们会笑的。
Right? And they're going to get other people to laugh too.
而且他也会让其他人笑起来。
This is a fun person.
这是一个挺好玩的人。
They might say, you know, I was reading a journal last week that said exactly the opposite of this.
他可能说，嘿，你知道吗？我上周才看了一本杂志，科学杂志，他说的正好跟你相反。
But what do I know? The writer could have been an idiot.
但是我能知道什么呢？没准这个写作的这个人，这个作者也是个傻瓜。
I'm not sure I agreed with everything he was saying anyway.
我也不确信我同意他所说的一切。
So there's more of a Sagittarius quality here to them emotionally.
所以说他们在情绪上面有更多的射手座的这样一个品质。
Remember, Moon in Sagittarius. Remember, first off, the moon is about your sense of emotional security, your emotional comfort.
月亮呢，是跟我们情感上的安全感、我们的舒适感相关。
Moon in Sag is sort of like, I don't really want to fight.
月亮在射手座的人可能想，我根本不太想跟你干仗。
I may have an opinion about something.
我可能有我的观点。
But in this case, the moon is trine Mars.
在这个例子中呢，月亮是三合火星。
This person still might be a little pompous. They've got Mars and Leo, pompous.
这个人可能还是稍微有点高傲哈，他的火星在狮子座。
Okay, that's just their nature.
不过这就是他们的天性。
They're still maybe flashing their little gold watch or whatever.
他可能还会显摆一下他的金表。
Mars and Leo.
火星在狮子座。
Hey, I got this watch in the magazine. No.
从杂志拿到这个表的。
No, I'm just kidding. But you can see where, in this case, the moon intercedes, and we can begin to see more of the person.
那么这个月亮呢，会让我们更多的看到这个人。
Okay. I just want you to think about how this works. Here, the moon's closer to Mars.
在这个例子中，月亮离火星更近一些。
By aspect. So this tends to smooth out a little bit. Doesn't cancel out the fact that they still like to debate. This person is going to debate others. There's no question about it.
这个人呢，还是喜欢跟其他人辩论，这是毫无疑问的。但是因为这个月亮和火星的三合相位呢，它会让这个更平顺一些。
But this person could be a comedian.
那么这个人还可能是一个喜剧演员。
A comedian is an actor.
那他是一个演员。
Right, he's got Mars and Leo, or she. That's
这
Mars
个
and
人呢，
Leo.
他是一个火星在狮子座的人。
And they say funny things.
他们会说非常有趣的事儿。
They say funny things that they observe, Mercury and Aquarius, about society.
他们水星在水瓶座，他们能观察到社会上发生的一些事儿，然后他们就拿这些事儿来开玩笑。
What do comedians usually do?
那么喜剧演员通常他们做的是什么呢？
They observe how groups of people behave.
他们去观察一群人的行为模式。
And they maybe say something about it that is kind of provocative to the audience.
他们会说一些非常能够激起公众情绪的事情。
And then they say something really funny.
然后他们说一些很有趣的事情。
Because they got the moon and Saturn.
因为他们的月亮在射手座。
They might say something like, I'm not sure I would really want to belong to any group that would have me as a member.
他可能会说，我可不确信我愿意接受我作为成员的任何团体，我愿意加入他们。
It's a great comic line from Groucho Marx.
这是一个很有名的喜剧演员曾经说过的话。
Okay. All right. That joke doesn't work in China. Oh, well, wasn't your translation wasn't funny? We need a funny translation of this. Does anyone know a funny translation of that?
就是这个例子中，maybe I need to read through this.
Okay.
这个例子中，虽然说这个月火的相位是初相位，但是因为这个月火相位更紧密啊，
All right.
所以说刚才他刚才有一些解释。
Okay. Look at this cartoon here.
你看一下这个下面这个卡通画。
What is this young what is this young woman saying here?
这个年轻的女性她在说什么呢？
My boyfriend's Mercury in Pisces is opposite his Saturn in Virgo, but squares his Uranus in Sagittarius. So I wonder if the reason he forgets to call me back is because Uranus cancels out his Saturn.
我的男朋友的水星在双鱼座与他的处女座土星成对分相，但是和他射手座的天王星和四分相，所以我在想，他忘记回我电话的原因是不是因为天王星抵消了土星的影响呢？
No.
并非如此。
Okay. One aspect does not cancel out another. They both continue to operate together.
一个相位不会被另外一个相位抵消，他们会一起运作。
Let's explore what this woman was talking about.
我们来探索一下这个女性她所谈的这个问题吧。
Maybe this young woman's boyfriend was preoccupied with his work.
也许这位年轻女士的男朋友专注于工作。
It fits his Mercury-Saturn aspect, doesn't it?
这是符合他水土相位的。
Maybe he doesn't like spending too much time on the phone or texting.
也许他不喜欢花太多时间打电话或者发短信。
That also sounds like Mercury-Saturn.
这也是水土相位的表达。
But regardless, Uranus does not cancel out his Saturn influence,
不管怎样，天王星就不会抵消到土星的影响，
nor does Saturn cancel out his Uranus influence.
土星也不会抵消到天王星的影响。
His communication style would still be erratic.
他的交流风格依然是有点古怪。
Okay. Though in the positive sense, he might also have a more original mind, maybe quick, maybe unique, with interesting, offbeat insights.
尽管从积极的角度来看，他拥有更富创意的头脑、敏捷独特、有趣，还有非传统的眼光。
And he has Mercury in Pisces, so he has quite an imagination, doesn't he?
而且他的水星在双鱼座，因为他有很好的想象力。
However, this opposition with Saturn reminds him to be more responsible in his communications with others, helping him to communicate at least the essential facts.
但是呢，这个与土星的对分相提醒他，在与别人沟通的时候要更负责任，帮助他至少要传达关键的信息。
Because we know Pisces, of course, can be very evasive.
因为我们知道双鱼座的水星呢，它会有这种逃避倾向。
Try to get the facts from a Pisces.
你想从一个双鱼座那里面拿到事实吧。
It's like trying to talk to somebody as if they committed a crime or something.
好像就是要说服这个人，他们没有做一个犯罪。
Getting the facts from Pisces, not an easy thing.
就是说你从那双鱼座人那儿知道这个事实真相是什么，不是太容易的。
But Saturn helps there, right?
不过土星呢会帮助他。
Saturn in Virgo.
特别是在处女座的土星。
This could be the Mercury position of a very creative scientist.
这可能是一个非常有创造力的科学家的这样一个水星相位。
Even a theoretical scientist, because he's got Uranus aspecting his Mercury too.
甚至他可能是一个理论科学家，因为他有天王星和水星的相位。
Mercury-Saturn aspects often show the scientific mind.
水星和土星的相位常常表现出科学家的思维形态。
Why is this?
为什么呢？
Because science is about predicting the facts, FACTS.
科学是要去预测这个实际的情况会是什么样的事实。
A scientist wants the same answer every time.
科学家希望他们不论他们的实验的结果总是一样的。
This is the problem that science has with astrology.
这就是科学家他们觉得占星学有问题的地方。
I want every time somebody's born with Mars square Uranus for them to have accidents.
我知道
Every time.
如果这个人他的火星和天王星有四分相的话，他每次都应该出事故。
You know, and we know astrology doesn't operate that way.
但是我们知道占星学并非如此运作。
You know, there are too many variables.
有太多的变量了。
Scientists appreciate variables, but they don't like variables.
这样科学家他们喜欢变量，但是他们真的不是太欣赏变量。
Scientists want things to work the same. We do this experiment, it turns the same way every time.
科学家希望每次实验的结果都是一致的。
That is Mercury-Saturn, Mercury-Saturn conjunction, Mercury-Saturn square, Mercury-Saturn opposition. These are Mercury-Saturn aspects.
这是水土的相位，它们合相、四分相、对分相都是有这样的倾向性。
Okay. But in this case, we also have Uranus involved.
但是在这个例子中呢，天王星也参与到其中了。
So we have a mind that wants the facts, but is also willing to experiment.
所以说呢，这个人的心智呢，他喜欢事实真相，但同时他也喜欢每次都有确凿的这个结果，但是他同时也喜欢实验。
A scientist that is willing to experiment may invent something.
一个愿意去发明创造的这个科学家，可能真的会发明一些东西。
They may come up with something new.
他们可能会有一些新的理论。
This is an interesting combination, isn't it?
这是一个非常有趣的组合，不是吗？
If you had a client with a Mercury-Saturn-Uranus combination, you would have or could have this kind of conversation with he or she.
如果你有一个客户，他有这样的水土天的组合，你可以就跟他有这样一份谈话。
And so we can begin to understand this boyfriend a little bit.
所以说呢，我们就可能更理解这个男友了。
Sometimes he might impulsively text a lot.
有时候他可能兴冲冲的给你发很多个短信。
But then he likes to be quiet and thoughtful, and you don't hear from him for a while.
然后呢，可能有一段时间呢，他就喜欢安静，然后更想深思熟虑，你就听不到他在说什么了。
Maybe he's very careful with what he says because he's concerned when the conversation or the subject becomes serious.
当这个问题呢更严肃的时候呢，他就更会小心谨慎。
He's like, I know my girlfriend is really worried about commitment.
他可能在讲我这个女朋友她现在特别担心我是不是给她一个承诺。
Commitment is a Saturn word.
承诺是一个土星的词汇。
So he gets serious and cautious, careful.
所以说这个时候呢，他就会严肃起来，然后也会更谨慎起来。
He watches what he says.
他就会很小心，就是自己到底说什么。
And then probably sometimes says some crazy things.
但是有时候他可能说一点非常疯狂的话。
Because he's got Uranus there, crazy planet.
因为他毕竟有一个疯狂的行星在哪里，天王星在哪里。
Okay. Now, somebody could say, well, maybe he's just not that into her.
有人可能说他可能就没那么喜欢他。
Maybe.
也许真的是如此。
We don't know.
我们不知道。
We don't have his whole chart, do we?
我们没有他的整个的星盘。
But we know something about his mind a little bit, and something about his style of communication.
我们能够了解一点点他是怎么想问题的，他的交流模式又是怎么样的。
Now, we've already talked about this Moon, Mars, Mercury thing. We already talked about this.
我们已经谈了就是这个月亮、火星、水星的这个了。
But I think this is a Moon and Sag guy with Mars and Leo. Didn't this look like a Mars and Leo guy with the Moon and Sagittarius? I always thought it did.
但是你看这张图是不是很像一个月亮射手、火星狮子的人呢？
I don't know about the Mercury and Aquarius, but I can see the Leo and Sag here.
我不太清楚这个图上有没有水瓶座的元素，不过我很清晰的看到狮子座和射手座的元素。
Some of you may see something else. I don't know.
有的人可能看到其他的一些星座。
All right. Another thing that I want you to know.
另外，我希望大家能够了解的。
Look at what's in red at the bottom of the page here.
你看看这个我们下面所说的这个善事的艺术。
Notice the phrase art of interpretation.
你看一下这个表述，就是善事的艺术。
What does that mean?
这是什么意思呢？
It means interpretation is an art.
它的意思就是说，我们解读实际上是一种艺术。
It is like drawing a picture, doing a sketch.
它就像素描一样。
Or painting a painting.
或者是你画油画一样。
I'm showing you as your teacher, imagine this was an art course.
作为一个老师，你们想象我们这是一个艺术课。
What I'm doing as a teacher is I'm saying, look, we've got 40 different styles of paintbrushes.
你可以看一下，我说哈，我们有40多个那个油画笔。
We've got another 50 different colors we can use.
我们还有50多种我们可用的颜料。
Or combinations.
或者是组合。They cannot hear me.
And so, I'm teaching you which brush to use when, for what kind of effect, what colors to use, what techniques, what methods.
我们在讲的是用哪一个画笔，用哪种颜色，用哪种技巧来画画。
This is what an art teacher does.
这就是艺术老师所做的。
But painting is still an art.
但是绘画仍然是一种艺术。
So is interpretation.
解读星图也是如此。
So don't be frustrated if at first you're not painting the Sistine Chapel.
所以说呢，你刚开始不会画西斯廷大教堂，这个没有什么问题，不要害怕，不要担心。
It takes practice.
你需要不断的练习才能去做。
You gotta mess with these things.
有时候你就是可能会画的一团糟。
You gotta think about them.
你必须去想一想，认真的思考。
When you're on the subway and you see someone laughing loudly,
当你在地铁上，你听到有人在大笑，
you can think Sagittarius.
你可能会想，这是射手座，
Or aspects to Jupiter.
或者是他有木星的相位。
Okay? When you see a really skinny person with a very sour look on their face.
你看到一个非常非常皮包骨头的人，他们脸上有一个非常苦涩的面容，
Very quiet.
而且特别安静。
You can think Saturn.
你可以想，这是土星。
Right? Saturn is very prominent in their chart.
你会想，这个土星在他们星图上肯定是非常显著。
You can recognize the faces of the planets and signs all around you.
你可以在你周围看到行星星座的这样的面容。
I do this in Beijing all the time.
我在北京总是这样来做的。
I'm a people watcher.
我喜欢观察人。
It also helps that I speak Chinese badly.
这也会就是说我说中文话说的很糟糕，也对我有所
I
帮
can
助。
just say, 我说的不好.
我就是说我说的不好。
People leave me alone.
人们就不理睬我了。
And I can watch them.
然后我就可以观察他们。
Okay. And I can guess what their astrological combination.
然后我去猜一猜他们的星图上面是什么样的。
If I'm walking down the sidewalk, if I'm on the subway.
不论在行人道还是在地铁上。
I can't help it. I'm an astrologer. This is how I think.
我是个占星师，我就会情不自禁的这么想。
All right, let's look at another aspect. And we have some flying questions here that, what do you think?
Someone said it's some planet conjunct sun will be burned out by sun.
No.
有位同学说，有这样一种说法，和太阳合相的行星会被太阳灼伤，有这样的说法吗？
You know, I think it's very important for all of you students to explore things that you read, explore things that you discover online.
我觉得呢，大家去自己探索，就是阅读一些材料啊，或者是在网上去阅读一些这些是很重要的。
And the roots of Western astrology are rooted in classical astrology.
西方占星学呢，他们的根基是古典占星。
But astrology also reinvented itself in the 20th century.
但是占星学在20世纪呢，它又重新创造了自己。
That reinvention process is still going on.
这个重新创造的过程还在延续。
And I can only share with you my experience of practice.
我只能跟大家分享我自己的实践。
And I've never seen the theory of combust or any of the theories about a planet like Mercury or Venus being close to the sun being burned up and therefore not expressed by the person.
我从来没有看到就是说金星啊、水星啊和太阳合相， 它就会灼伤。
This is an interesting classical concept.
这是一个非常有趣的古典概念。
I find classical astrology to be very interesting.
我觉得古典占星也很有趣。
And I still think there's a lot to discover there and a lot to find out that may have very beneficial application in modern astrology.
我觉得可能这些概念呢，可能在现代占星学中呢，也可能是我们可以去发现也有益之处。
But this whole via combust theory, I've never really seen it.
但是这所有的这个灼伤的这个概念呢，我从来没在实践中看到过。
Okay. So another interesting question there.
就是大卫老师根本不认为他根本不去看这样一个，就是如果合相了是不是就灼伤，他不认为是这样的。我这个名词可能翻译的不太准确哈，等回来再去找一找。
Good. I can sit here and watch.
所以说你不用看那个方面，就是从他的来说，他的实践来也，水土合相，水土六合一度哪个更强？About if the Mercury and the Saturn conjunction, the orb is 2, and the Mercury Saturn sextile, but the orb is 1, which one is more powerful?
More powerful. The conjunction, of course, is a stronger aspect than the sextile.
那么合相是比六分相更强的相位。
You know, but again, the sextile is still going to operate. It's just going to be, you know, a little less obvious.
那么这个毫无疑问，这个六分相呢也会运作的，只不过是它不像合相这么强。
You know.
Someone asked whether it depends on which sign.
Yeah, the signs are factors somewhat.
当然这个星座也会有所影响。
But here's what I want you to watch out for.
但是大家要小心这一点。
Watch out looking at a planet in a sign and saying, "Oh, this is bad."
就是你们要小心的是，你要看到一个行星落在星座，你就说这不好。
You know, you have the sun in Aquarius, and that's its detriment.
你的太阳落在了水瓶座，它是在落线的位置。
That's bad.
这是糟糕的。
Or you have the sun in Libra, you know, that's its fall.
那你们这个太阳是在天秤座，
I'm sorry.
又是在落线的位置。
I'm sad for you.
他说你太糟糕，我真为你感到难过。
That's a sad thing.
这真是个难过的事
But
情。
I have the moon in Taurus, which is exalted.
但是我的月亮在金牛座，这是在灼生的位置。
How? I like chocolate.
我喜欢巧克力。
Yes, that's exalted.
这就是灼生。
Maybe it is.
也许就是如此吧。
All I'm saying is, don't let some of the older notions of astrology cause you to form prejudice or bias against a sign as being a negative or bad thing.
就我的意思是，不要让原来古典占星的里面讲到的这些就是哪个行星落在哪儿不好，有这样的评判，
Whether something operates as bad or good depends on the person, what they do with it.
关键是这个行星它的运作到底是好还是不好，取决于这个人他们做了什么。
What they do with it, that's the key.
这是关键。
Okay, what is
I'm trying to.
We're trying to get to as many of your questions as possible.
空线的月亮没有成果。
So Candace has a question.
An unexpected moon. Sue says an unexpected moon means fruitless. So
Means what?
No result. No result.
Fruitless, unexpected.
Unexpected moon.
No.
So she doesn't read the chart when the moon is unexpected.
Doesn't read the chart?
Interpret chart.
No, you mean you're talking about a horary chart, right?
你说的这个苏，你是在什么时候说的？就是苏是这么说的。 It's not. 你说的是这个是
You know about void of course moon?
void course moon.
Let me explain something about void of course moon.
我们讨论一下这个 I forget the Chinese interpretation.
Really?
Void course moon.
Okay.
空相的月亮，就是月亮没有在离开一个星座之前没有形成相位。
Okay.
好，空王，对，空王。
A void of course moon is, when it comes to natal astrology, a birth chart,
就本命盘而言，如果这个月亮空王，
is not a factor.
它根本不是我们所考虑的要素。
If it was, I could just have pity on my good friend Jeff Jower.
如果真是如此的话，那我对我的好朋友杰夫·焦尔，我真是对他只有那个遗憾了。
Like millions of people, he was born with a void of course moon. Oh my God.
空王和空相不是一个意思哈，就是他和，就是说，因为这个同学他在前面说的是空相，后面呢好像他又在说空王，所以说这两个不是一个意思。
You will find people born during a void of course moon
很多人都出生在月亮空王的时候。
begging money all their lives outside the train station.
可能很多人他们都会在外面乞讨。
Not. You will not.
你不会看到很多人。
This is a joke.
这是一个笑话。
I have a book by written in the 4th century by Julius Firmicus Maternus.
有一个在4世纪的一个人写的一本书，刚才他说的那个人。
In this book, he says, someone born with a void of course moon will be a penniless beggar hanging outside of the temple all their life.
这本书上呢，他写到，一个人如果他出生盘上月亮空王的话，他就是一个他是非常一个贫困的人，他一分文没有，然后一直在庙外乞讨。
I read this to Jeff once.
有一次我就对杰夫读了这段话。
And we had a good laugh about this.
然后我们就大笑了一场。
Is there a problem?
空王是这个意思，空王其实，这个同学他说的是不是空相？空相的意思是没有形成柏拉图，不是，老是柏拉图相位，没有形成那个5个主要相位，那个是叫空相。但是空王是指月亮在离开这个相位，就是说离开这个星座之前不再形成相位了。比方月亮它不再形成主要的那个相位了。比方说月亮在29度，月亮在15度吧。但是15度之后，就是你想象它在出天平，比方月亮在15度天平座，它在出天平座之后，就是月亮在这个之前，在出天平座之前，它不再跟其他行星形成相位。就你想象那个月亮是移动的，明白吗？不是，因为我们在本命盘月亮不是不动吗？在那儿，但是你想象这个月亮是移动的，但是它从它15度到30度。它都不再和星盘上其他任何行星形成主要相位了，那个我们就认为它是一个空王的月亮。这个在我们的本命盘上根本没有任何的意义，所以说大家不要纠结这个相位。这个主要是看的是卜卦盘，在卜卦盘上，卜卦占星学，在本命上面我们不会看，而且月亮在某一天中总是有空王的时候的，很多时候都会有空王。OK。就老实说，就是不用去看它。
对。
They do not know for and detriment.
They don't know about those terms, yeah. Those terms are from classical astrology.
就是说线落哈，这个是古典占星学里面的概念。
I'm not a classical astrologer, but I think it's good for students to read and to know about classical astrology, but I'm not a classical astrologer.
那我不是一个古典占星师，虽然我认为你们去看一看古典占星的书也没什么不好。
In November of this year, we will have a classical astrologer who is probably the #1 classical astrologer in the world, Robert Hand, who will be doing a webinar for Nodor.
在今年11月，可能是世界上最棒的古典占星家叫 Robert Hand， 他会为我们带来古典占星的网络课程。
He has a PhD in the subject from Catholic University.
他在 Catholic 大学，他有这个
Catholic College,
博士学位。
Okay. All right. And it's a very deep subject, classical astrology.
这是一
Very
个
deep.
非常深的这样一个科目哈，学科。
To me, it is more about the history of astrology.
它对我来说，它更多是这个占星学的历史。There's another question that applying means the energy is stronger and stronger, and separating means it's winning out.
Yes.
So for those
Weaker and weaker.
Yeah, weaker and weaker. So for this inharmonious aspect, is the separating more comfortable? 这位同学问，就入相是不是能量越来越强，而出相是不是越来越衰减？那么对不合相相位，出相会不会更舒服一些？老师说是的。
I would say that in a general sense, that's probably true, and that's a very good observation. We get another red star.
这是一个很好的这样一个观察啊。对，
Okay.
出相更舒服一点。不过这都是不过再讲句话吧，这些都是非常微妙的东西。你真的看星盘的时候，它有比这重要的多的东西要考虑。I'm saying this is a very subtle thing. When you read a chart, there are much more.
Remember, interpretation is an art. So you're like learning about brushstrokes here.
就是说解读星图是一个艺术，所以说大家就看的其实我们是在这个
Sometimes, you know, when
笔
you're
触哈，这都是笔触。
when you're painting a face and you're like working on the eye, you know.
有时候比如说你在画一张脸，然后呢你在那画眼睛的细节。
For a while, it's looking pretty good.
有一段时间你看上去看着很不错。
And then you put one more little bit of paint, and you're like, oh.
然后你就画了一个颜色，你觉得哇糟糕了。
It's the same way with chart interpretation.
那个星盘解读也是如此。
And what I'm sharing with you is the result of having made many mistakes.
我跟大家分享的也是我犯了很多错误之后这样的一个分享。
And believe me, when you are practicing astrology, you remember your mistakes.
你是一个真正去职业的占星师的时候哈，你会犯很多的错误，而且你会记得你那所犯的错误的。
And there's no question that the first several years or more of my practice were full of mistakes.
我开始职业的那几年，那我的咨询里面充满了错误。
And this was after I'd been studying for 6 years.
这个是我就是哪怕我学了占星7年之后，我都有这样的感觉。
You know, just because astrology is a very serious subject.
因为占星学确实是很认真的一个题目。
It's also a very exciting subject.
而且也是非常令人兴奋的。
I can't tell you how rewarding it is.
就是它给我带来非常多的这样的回报。
I still do sessions every week.
我每周还在做咨询。
You know, and here in China, and I can tell you that the rewards of working with people continues to astonish me even after 38 years of practice.
现在我每次到中国来呢，我也为中国人做咨询。那么我其实这个咨询本身也给我很大的回报。
Now, some of you, I'm sure, I'm absolutely positive, many of you will go out there and become a better astrologer than me. I hope you will.
我也确信很多人以后会成为比我更好的占星师。我也希望大家能做到。
I have to say that my students in China are the best students that I've ever had.
我要说我在中国的学生是我有的最好的学生。
And you continue to impress me.
你们总是让我惊讶。
And drive me crazy sometimes.
有时候让我发疯。
Which is a good thing.
这也是件好事儿。
Okay. All right. Do we have another question out here?
还有其他的问题吗？
Okay. Was there one there that you saw?
No.
Okay. All right. We've got about 7 or 8 minutes left.
我们还有6到7分钟。
Let's take a look at this aspect right here. And if some of you come up with another question, I will try and answer it tonight. This is a good night.
我们先看一下这样下面一个相位吧。如果大家有问题的话呢，我们再会看一下大家的问题。
Okay. Here we have an aspect combination, kind of interesting.
我们这里面呢有一个很有趣的这样一个组合，相位组合。
Here I've added in something just to get you used to looking at it.
那我这儿呢，我加了一些东西，你们可以多去看一看。
Let's read this across.
我们来看一看。
How would you read this? This is Venus.
这是金星。
金星 at 11 degrees of Gemini, 19 minutes. Quincunx, Pluto, 13 degrees of Scorpio, 21 minutes.
这是双子座11度19分的金星和天蝎座13度21分的女王星形成梅花相位。
What I've done is I've added in the minutes because I want you to get used to seeing minutes.
我把这个分也加上了，因为我希望大家能够熟练的看到分。
When you look at a chart, you will not only see degrees, you will also see minutes.
因为当你看星图的时候，你看到不仅是度数，还有分。
Every degree of the zodiac, and we know there are 30 degrees to a sign, every degree has 60 minutes.
每一度有60分。
Every degree has 60 minutes.
每一度有60分，一个星座有30度。
This math comes from ancient Sumer, the city of Sumer, and the Sumerians, by the way, thousands of years ago.
这是苏美尔。
Sumerians.
You
ever wonder why a clock is numbered to 12?
你们知道为什么这个钟表是12个？
This goes back to ancient Sumer.
这都要归功于古苏美尔人。
Sumerians, they used this mathematics. It was based on 6.
他们用的数学就是基于6的这个数字。
60 minutes in an hour, 60 minutes in a degree,
就是说1小时60分，一度60分。
Because they were the first ones in that part of the world to start using numbers a long time ago, we just kept doing it.
因为他们是那个就是世界上他们最早是这么用的，所以说我们就接着这么用了。
And they kept the most accurate records of the planets.
而且他们就是的天象记录是最准确的。
Okay, so it's interesting, isn't it? Smart people studied astrology.
苏美尔人是非常聪明的人，他们他们研究占星学的。
In every major society, this is true in China, this is true all over the world, wherever there was a growth or a surge in knowledge of that society, there was also a surge in astrological knowledge.
在古代社会，就是说，每当有那个知识的这样一个复兴，知识的这样一个爆发的时候呢，在占星学上也都会有这样的。
You go to Temple Park here in Beijing.
但是你们去天坛。
All of you know this is laid out astronomically, astrologically.
大家都知道天坛它是按照
Chinese
占星学的这样的方位来布置的。
It's amazing to go there and look at the plan.
你去看那些行星是非常棒的。
Okay. All right.
刚才他也说，就是在古代社会是最聪明的人才去学占星。
This was a high level of culture, high level of
这
society.
是高等的这样的文化，高等的社会。
Okay. Smart people.
非常聪明的人。
Okay. All right. Remind your friends of that when they're giving you a hard time about astrology.
要提醒你的朋友，如果他们难为你们的话啊。
Tell them it was always the smart people in society.
在历史上总是最聪明的人，因为那时候最早的时候其实是神庙的祭司，然后慢慢呢是那些贵族去观天象的那些人，就是他们之所以能观天象，他们是有很聪明的这样的人，就是最古老的时候，天文学家和天象是占星学他们融合的，而且大部分都是数学家和几何学家、形学家。
So what comes to mind when you see this aspect here?
所以说，当你看到这个相位，你一下想到的是什么呢？
We have Venus and Gemini, don't we?
这个人的星星在双子座。
And look at this. We got somebody in this picture on the phone.
我们看这个人，他拿这个手机在这个图中。
Gemini. We got somebody else with their watch showing there.
还有一个人呢，他把这个表伸了出来。
We have the quincunx aspect. What's the key word for the quincunx?
而且还有这个梅花相位，梅花相位的关键词是什么呢？
Adjustment.
调整。
调整. Is that right? Adjustment.
调整。
I like that. 调整 sounds like adjustment. I like that. All right. But to Pluto.
但是这个是和女王星形成的梅花相位。
Maybe there's an appointment here of some kind that has to do with money.
也许这个人呢要有一个约会，是跟钱相关的约会。
Venus is a planet associated with money, right?
金星是和金钱相关的行星。
Right. Pluto can have a lot to do also with money. We know the second house and the eighth house, Taurus and Scorpio, these are money signs.
那么冥王星也是和金钱相关的。我们知道2宫和8宫，一个是跟金牛座，一个是跟天蝎座，他们2个都是跟钱相关的。
You know, so let's take a look at this. Read what it says here.
我们看一看，看看这个材料上是怎么讲的。
We also know Venus is a social sign.
我们知道金星也一个是社交型的星座。
And we got issues here about control and trust.
那么这里面呢，又有冥王和星和天蝎座都是跟控制和信任相关的。
Like it says here, let's assume the interaction in this picture involves a business situation, and the woman is the one born with the Venus-Pluto aspect.
我们来假设左边的这幅图呢，它是涉及了一个商业场景，而这个女士就是图上金星和冥王星形成梅花相位5/2相的人。
Let's say the man is a client and she is showing him some investment property.
那么我们假设这个男士他是一个客户，他向他展示一些商业地产。
She's taking a phone call.
然后这个女性在接电话。
She's very aware that her client is holding his watch up and looking at his watch.
那么但是呢，他能敏锐地意识到他的客户把那个戴着手表的手腕抬了起来，而且视线转向别处。
She knows that he's a valuable client and that closing this deal could bring her a fat commission.
他也知道这个客户是一个很有价值的客户，他也知道做成这笔交易可以给他带来丰厚的佣金。
But this call is from another wealthy client that is also interested in the same property.
那么但是电话来自另外一个也是很有钱的客户，而且那个客户呢对这个地产项目也感兴趣。
She is having to adjust her interaction with the present client to respond to the potential gain from the other client.
他不得不调整与现场这位客户的互动，从而回应可能从另外一个客户那里获得的利益。
Guess what? She's good at doing that.
你猜怎么着？她很擅长做这个。
She was born with a great aspect for making this kind of adjustment.
她有一个特别棒的一个相位啊，就是能够做出这种调整来的相位。
Okay. You can read the rest of this in your own time.
你可以课下呢自己来读一读这个相位的解读。
But I want you to begin to see how you can think about life situations when it comes to these natal aspects, these birth aspects.
但是呢，我觉得你们大家可以去想一想，就是我们生活中的其他的场景哈，就跟我们的相位相关的场景。
All right. So we got some other questions and comments here from our students.
等一会儿，这大家先打哈。刚才我看到一个同学有一个问题。
Wow, look at that. What did we do?
行运星会不会改变本命盘有相位形成的力量对比和反应模式？行运星会不会改变？我不太清楚这个。Candice， 你这个问题，你能不能把你的问题更清晰的描述一下？因为我们这儿没有讲行运，我们讲的是本命盘。就是我们在本命盘课上最好是问本命盘的问题，因为本命盘其实是有很多问题的。
Okay, so you answered that one. No.
Because she's talking about transit and saying that this is not a class for transit.
No.
Maybe you can, I think, for the rest of the time, it's already time.
Yeah, no. I was aware of that. I'm just giving everybody a last chance.
Okay.
All right. So we've gone further with the aspects tonight.
我们今天就是相位更讲的多了一些。
I want you to keep practicing, keep listing as many aspect combinations as you can. Do this as an experiment.
我希望大家是能够尽可能的去解读相位然后把它作为一个实验去来。
In fact, you can do this when you're at lunch. You can do this when you're at dinner.
你吃饭的时候都可以，吃午饭吃晚饭的时候都可以这样讲。
Keep practicing these.
大家是不断的要去来做这个相位。
All right, that's it for tonight.
今天就到此为止。
再见，拜拜。
再见，
拜拜。Yes,
就是等一会儿，也许大家可能很多人现在可能还不明白的是一个盈亏相位哈，盈亏和出相位、入相位能够完全明白吗？就他们完全不同的。 盈亏空亡不了，就大家现在千万不要去想空亡的意思，空亡根本不是在本命盘里面的。不要想空亡，就盈亏和出相入相是不一样的。盈亏我们讲过吗？讲过那个月亮的。但是下面没有讲过盈亏吗？就是盈的四分相和亏的四分相。哦，没有讲过就算了，没有讲过算了。No, because we some friends talking about you saying about waxing aspect and lunar aspect, but actually we don't have the concept yet, so they are confused.
Yeah, that concept is more of an advanced concept. I've been suggesting it out there to some of you.
But when you through new things, they will be confused, such as world cause things. And I expected, maybe we need to.
Oh, we will. We will address those next week.
我们下周再来讲哈，就不用现在先不用着急，就先把那个出相位、入相位弄明白嘛就好了。其他的不是在那个本命盘上也有盈亏，就像月亮的盈一样。你现在是满月，你月亮是上弦月、下弦月，下弦月就是亏的。
Here's a very important point. When you are learning aspects, I don't want you to get bogged down in the details.
当你们学相位的时候呢，大家不要陷入细节。
There are a lot of different details about aspects.
就是说对于相位本身有特别多的这种小细节。
I want you to learn how the aspects work first before you learn about all the variations.
对，大家在就是知道那些变化之前，先了解这个相位是怎么运作的更好。
Okay?
对，下弦月形成的就是亏相位。
Great.
现在其实更重要的是，就是你能解释清楚这个相位是什么意思，因为一个相位其实有很多的解读的，而且比方说就算是比方说金星和冥王星的四分相，金星在不同星座，它跟冥王星在不同星座的四分相也表达不一样啊。所以说不要去问那些很细节的问题，那些都跟这些问题相比不重要太多了。
Okay.
那要一个人的本命盘里边，比如说没有这种主要的相位，比如说那个没有12分相或者没有梅花这种，是代表是有什么缺失吗？
没有任何缺失，不可能。那个12分相位和梅花相位，它比合相啊、四分相啊、倍分相啊，对，这除非是非常紧密，那个叫小相位。
We're still discussing it here. I think everyone's going to stay here tonight.
对，大家先关注那个，把那个四分相、对分相什么的合相啊，这5个主要相位到底什么意思？这个必须在2分钟。不是，主要阿克桑啊，它是这样的，我们曾经进过，结果还被海关那个了，也还被查了，被劫了，就是你要真被他劫的话，我们这个买书的又会那个，就是很麻烦。他觉得你好像没有突出进口资格，你怎么再买这么多书？因为一旦买多了会成这个问题。